We have taken a look at all the different types of interest groups and gone through a lot of examples of interest groups. So today we're going to take a look at the different tactics that interest groups use to try to influence policy. So we'll take a look at all the different strategies that they'll use, and what we'll want to be able to do is talk about which strategies would work best for certain groups that we'll come across. Like, not every type of interest group is going to be effective using each strategy. So here you see a picture of the Sierra Club, and these guys are working for the Sierra Club. This is an environmental interest group, and they are interacting with regular people in the park. So they're trying to inform the public, one of the many strategies we'll talk about. Our objective today, we are going to describe the different tactics that interest groups use. So we're going to take a look at grassroots activism, we're going to take a look at litigation, lobbying, electioneering. We're going to talk about these 4 tactics that the groups use. What we want to make sure we're able to do is explain how the different types of interest groups can use those to influence policy effectively. So we'll talk about the different strategies that are used, and then we'll think about which groups that we've gone through, which types of groups would use each strategy the best. So we'll be able to answer the question today: how do interest groups attempt to influence policies? First thing we're going to talk about today is working with the public. So we're going to call this grassroots activism. What you see here is an interest group we know very well, the NAACP, and we see that they're hosting a march. There's lots of people involved. This is out in the public, and so what we see here is the interest group trying to win over the attitudes of the public. They're trying to convince the public to put pressure on lawmakers to get policies changed. So this is the first tactic that we'll go through today, called grassroots lobbying, or we can also call this propaganda. When we are talking about grassroots lobbying, or what we'll call propaganda, we're talking about how interest groups are trying to influence the public. They want to do their best to get the public opinion on their side. They're going to try to change people's minds about an issue or give people information about an issue to shape their opinions. Ultimately, the people that the group convinces, or the people that end up sharing the policy stance as the interest group, are expected to put pressure on policymakers. So, like in that march, if the NAACP gets a lot of support from new people in the public, those people will pressure their lawmakers to make the kinds of policies that the NAACP wants. So in this way, the group has influenced policy by influencing the opinions of the public. When we use the term grassroots, we're talking about attempting to mobilize average people. This is about going out into the community and finding regular people to associate themselves with the interest group. If the group is successful in its attempts to reach out to the public, to regular people, then the group benefits because they have probably added new members from the potential group to the actual group. The group can then rely on these people for fundraising, for other activities. They can rely on those people to help them find more people to join their group. And when the interest group is mobilizing in this way, they're able to show the public how much support there is for the group interest. That's what's so great about a march. Is a march looks like a huge crowd of people. Other people see it and they think, wow, there's really a lot of support for that policy stance. Here's an example of the types of things we might see that we'd call grassroots activism or propaganda. This is just, advertisements. They're for the regular public. This is a Greenpeace advertisement from a bus stop. So they're trying to reach out to average people that are just, hanging out, trying to get to work. Greenpeace is an environmental activist group. They are trying to advocate for policies that help the environment, so they post these advertisements near the Museum of Natural History, and this gives people specialized information about a topic that they probably don't know much about. In this case, letting people know that tigers are going to go extinct if we don't do something about it. So people will see this advertising, they'll get upset, they may contact the group. You see there's actually a QR code there that helps activate people. Like, they can just scan that and get involved with the group immediately, but they'll try to get people involved with the group, try to raise some money to help raise awareness for the issues that Greenpeace is working on. Peta is an interest group that we are familiar with. They advocate for animal rights. This is an ad that they placed in a bunch of magazines. So all kinds of people reading magazines are going to encounter this ad. Here we have a celebrity. We have Charlize Theron. She says, "If you wouldn't wear your dog, please don't wear any fur." So this is an appeal to emotion. This is an appeal to people's feelings about their pets to try to change their mind about a policy. It also includes their website. It lets people know how they can get involved with the group and try to influence policy here. So this is another example of grassroots activism or propaganda. They're trying to reach out to the public, trying to get the public on the side of the group, and then get the public to act and try to influence lawmakers. Interest groups will also use advertisements like commercials. These are made to appeal to the average person, right? Regular old voters, people are supposed to see these ads and they're going to they're going to change their mind about policy stances, or maybe these ads will be like appeals to emotion and stuff like that. People will get upset and people will now be ready to like contact their lawmakers and do something about it. So the goal here with grassroots mobilization is that the group has informed regular people of something. They have influenced regular people, and now the regular people are going to let the policymakers know what their policy preferences are. Here we see the inside of a congressman's office. So this is an office near Congress. The congressman there having a cup of coffee has a group of people visiting him. These are lobbyists. So these are people that are hired by the interest group to go and have meetings and inform the lawmakers themselves so that they can try to influence the policy decisions of the lawmakers. Lobbying is what we call it when the interest groups are trying to directly influence the policymakers themselves. They are going to meet with the policymakers of all different types of policymakers. They're going to try to discuss policies with them. They're going to try to sway the opinion of the lawmaker in order to get what the group wants. The point of this is that the people in the interest group, remember when we were first talking about interest groups, we mentioned how they were policy specialists. The people who are in policy making positions, they are from political parties. They tend to be policy generalists. So the members of the interest group here are giving specialized information to the decision makers so that hopefully they can sway the decisions made by the lawmakers. The lobbyists serve as a source of specialized information for the policymaker. Since they come from that specialized background, they work only with the interest group. That means they're experts on the issues that the interest group cares about. So what they're going to be talking to the lawmakers about is they're going to recommend policy changes. They might even have done research and they can recommend the best ways to talk about these policy changes to convince the public, which would be that's an example of them giving strategy advice. They may give strategy advice for helping to win elections. They can show the lawmaker, hey, if you adopt this policy stance, this many number of voters are going to switch over to your side. So they're coming to the lawmakers with all kind of specialized information in order to try to get the policy changes that they want to see. Here's a dirty little secret of American government. In a lot of cases, instead of giving the lawmakers advice or special information, the lobbyists are actually just writing the laws themselves. They are giving pre-written laws to members of Congress and to local governments. And they're trying to convince those policymakers that these laws are what the people want. And so the policymakers then propose the bills that are written by the interest groups. They go through the regular lawmaking process, just like Congress is supposed to do. So what happens here is we have a situation we're going to talk a lot about when we get to iron triangles. We have a situation where interest groups are actually writing the laws and getting the legislatures, either the national one or the state ones, to pass the laws that the interest groups want. This stuff goes on behind the scenes. It's usually boring little stuff that people aren't going to pay attention to. And so this is one of the ways that interest groups are most successful. A lobbyist is a paid employee of an interest group. They can also represent a corporation or a union. Those are just other, versions of advocacy groups here. They're going to speak with decision makers. They are talking directly to the policymakers and the government officials on behalf of either the interest group, the corporation, or the union. if the person is a lobbyist, they have to register with the national government. The national government's going to keep track of them, keep track of who they meet with, and they're going to have to keep records of all of the meetings that they have so that we can track what lobbyists do. Some lobbyists are so good at what they do, like they are able to lobby for any particular group. They don't care about a particular issue. They're just good at lobbying. So they get hired by all sorts of different groups. This is usually because they have good relationships with the policymakers. When we talk about iron triangles and revolving doors tomorrow, this will make a lot more sense. But this is for the lobbyists that are very connected in Congress. They'll get hired because they can get certain things done with certain groups of congressmen. It doesn't matter what the issue is. They're just good at being a lobbyist. And so any interest group can temporarily hire them to lobby and to meet with policymakers on the group's behalf. This means that even small interest groups, like you may be an interest group that's not super powerful, but even small interest groups have the opportunity to hire some of the best lobbyists temporarily and take advantage of the close relationships that they have with policymakers. We said that lobbyists had to register with the government. This is because of a law called the Lobbying Disclosure Act. We want to make sure that we can regulate and monitor lobbyists and their activities. We can make sure that they don't have too much influence over the policies that are passed. So the Lobbying Disclosure Act says that all lobbyists have to be registered with the government. They have to indicate who they are, who they represent. They have to indicate all the meetings that they have. All this information is available to us. So we can track lobbyists and we can see who they're trying to influence and what laws they have influence over. Sad news, this is not a very effective policy. The lobbyists actually get around this in a lot of ways. So here's some tricky details of this law. And these details are not important for you to remember. We just want to think about why they're there. So if you spend less than 20% of your job lobbying, then you're not an actual lobbyist. You don't have to register with the government. If you contribute less than $10,000, then you don't have to register as a lobbyist either. The other thing here is that enforcing this Lobbying Disclosure Act is the responsibility of the clerk of the Senate, and they are way too busy to deal with all of the meetings that are going on with the 535 different congressmen. So these are tiny little details of the law, and none of these details should make you upset. And that's the point. Who do you think influenced the writing of these laws, right? This is an example of the kind of details that lobbyists would write. Lobbyists would say, if you spend less than 20% of your time lobbying, then you don't have to register. So all they have to do is spend 80% of their work time doing anything else. And then they can lobby as much as they want, as long as they're doing it less than a fifth of the time. They don't have to register if they contribute less than $10,000 to a official or a campaign. So the most common contribution is going to be right around $9,900. They would also have some influence over who has to enforce this law and make sure that it would be an ineffective law to be enforced on the lobbyists. All right, so lobbying is supposed to be a clean version of a policy specialist helping out a policy generalist decision maker. So those people in interest groups are just given good information to those congressmen and legislators and presidents, judges, whoever. But we see that lobbying is the kind of thing where there is a lot of corruption. We're going to move on to another couple of tactics here, and we will also see what looks like straight up bribery when we shift over into electioneering.